Lauren Boebert is up for re-election and is struggling to gain support even within her own party. However, she's now telling a story about how years ago she was in a much different position. Boebert is claiming that several years ago, Nikki Haley offered her a political endorsement and campaign funds, but Boebert turned her down.
Nikki Haley has come to my campaign in the past trying to offer support and even donations, which I declined. Her staff was absolutely shocked that anyone would turn down a double maxed out check from her. But I didn't want Nikki Haley's support. And this was years ago, before she had ever considered challenging President Trump.
And I mean, this is a bold-faced lie.
Perhaps this is an effort on Boebert's part to cozy up to Trump. Following the Iowa caucus and New Hampshire primary, Ron DeSantis is now officially out of the presidential race, leaving Trump to face off against Haley. Haley is Trump's only real competition in the field at this point, and honestly, that's generous to Haley. She's not much of an actual threat to Trump so much as she is just literally a viable candidate. Boebert's statements are, I'd imagine, an attempt for Boebert to prove how strong her foresight is, or to show that her morals and values are constant, reliable, and true. Perhaps she thinks this will help solidify her seat in Congress, or maybe she's simply chasing a Fox News commentator gig at this point. Either way, Nikki Haley has not confirmed or denied the veracity of the story. Does it matter whether or not it's true, though? Yes, it matters as far as Nikki Haley is concerned, but overall, I don't know how many people are looking to Lauren Boebert for a presidential endorsement. She didn't offer much of a reason as to why she didn't want support from Nikki Haley, apart from saying on X that Haley's campaign was, quote, not about freedom. And therein lies one of the problems with modern political discourse. You can say nothing at all, but audiences will extrapolate meaning on their own. To say something or someone is not about freedom is an incomplete statement or thought. It's not exactly a well-developed thesis. It's a soundbite designed for this very unique era in human history in which incomplete thoughts are prized for clickability and virality. Republicans, specifically MAGA Republicans, love to talk about freedom as if, one, Americans are the only ones who live in a so-called free society, and two, as if Democrats don't value the freedoms granted to them by the society and government. I don't think I need to explain the hypocrisy of some of their stances to this audience, but I'll just briefly mention that they are anti-choice when it comes to women's bodies. They frequently refer to the Bible when discussing secular legislation, completely disregarding and disrespecting this country's freedom of religion. They cry about how the left attacks their freedoms of speech just because the left doesn't like a lot of the things that they say, but they completely ignore the fact that none of them are being thrown into jail by their government for saying the things that they're saying, no matter how dangerous the rhetoric can be argued to be. On top of all of that, they constantly argue for smaller government, and yet Republican state governments are constantly interfering in blue local governments. And the last Republican president was the first president to not quietly concede to an election loss. And as much as the left supposedly doesn't care about freedom, the left isn't making excuses for insurrectionist behavior. The left seems to understand how incredibly fragile something like democracy is. The left understands that the United States has only really functioned as a democracy for a few decades, not centuries. And the left seems incredibly concerned with preserving the very delicate state of this young American democracy, especially as we see the state of other comparable governments around the world. If you look at some of the other major governments and some of the largest nations and militaries in the world, Russia, China, India, Brazil, Israel, we are doing things far better than a lot of them as far as freedoms go. But we can and should still recognize that incredibly slippery slope. We see how easy it can be for an entire nation to slide into fascism or to fall in line behind an authoritarian leader. All of that to say, this sort of isn't or shouldn't be a right-left issue. We all love our freedom in this country. Some of us just think that it can be better or more inclusive than it already is. Some of us can just recognize the issues within something without rejecting the entire premise. It's possible to love something, like your home, like your country, like your culture, while recognizing the flaws within it. All American political campaigns are inherently about freedom, whether that's the further liberation of American citizens, or the suppression of individual freedoms. It's not a talking point that should be taken lightly, and it's certainly not something that should be conflated with a man who disrupted the peaceful transfer of power in this country. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my podcast, Modern Context. Thanks.